Right? And according to you, we completed the first 4 verses. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعاديات ضبحا فالموريات قدحا فالمغيرات سبحا فأثرن به نقعا فوسطن. Okay, so yeah, fa would be like a waw al-atf. You just call it fa al-atf or al-fa atifa, same thing, right? Wasata. Wasata is your verb. And if you look it up in the dictionary, you will see wasata means the middle, right? Right in the middle. In this case, فَوَسَطْنَا. فَوَسَطْنَا. Now, what is this na at the end? Who can tell me what this na is at the end? While you're thinking about that, wasata means in the middle. So how does that become a verb? How do you middle something? Okay, so we'll explain that in a moment. But first tell me, what is the na at the end of the word فَوَسَطْنَا? The answer is
Means we.
literally in front of you.
We.
We know. Good guess, but not quite, right?
Is it
It
female
would have been
plural?
wasatun. Sorry, say that again. I didn't catch that last one.
They many
Female plural.
Female plural. They many females did. فعلا فعلا فعلوا فعلت فعلتا فعل نه. Right? فعلا فعلا فعلوا فعلت فعلتا فعل نه. You get it? Is
Yes,
Khanit in
Moy.
this class? And Abu Abbas. Do you guys remember that? فعلا فعلا فعلوا فعلت فعلتا فعلنا.
You just learned it a bit differently, Maulana. That's why.
It's very early.
Uncle Abbas, what did you say?
Yes, we remember it. It's just very early, like you still.
Okay. Okay. So it's they 3 or more females did. So where's this going back to? Where's the 3 or more females?
Is it the horses, Maulana?
That's correct. Adiyat. Adiyat. There's the Jammu Annath Salim there, the at on Adiyat. Okay. Shukran, Sister Hasina. I do see your answers as well. So فَوَسَطْنَا. So how do you middle something? Again, these horses, they go right into the center of the enemy troops. They don't hesitate. Really an ajib surah, wallahi. Like I don't know. The more I read the surah and teach the tafsir of the surah, the more I fall in love with it. And for no other reason but because of the profound, picturesque nature of the surah. It takes you on this wild ride, literally and figuratively, because you can hear. I said it last night in the podcast that we had. Zakaria was also on there. When Allah Subhanahu wa Taala speaks here, it's onomatopoeia, but it's on another level of ma'na. Like والعاديات ضبحا فالموريات قدحا فالمغيرات سبحا فأثرن به نقعا فوسطن به جمعا. Even in the word فوسطن, there's so much bounce in that word, if I can call it that. You can almost hear the horses penetrate into that army, the enemy camp. Anyway, I think I went off on a tangent already in the first couple of classes around the surah because of the meaning. So the horses, they penetrate into the middle of the camp. That's what the word means. Bihi, I think that's pretty clear. Jar wa majroor. Jam'a, and this is your maf'ul. So you had your fi'al, which was wasata. Then you had your fa'il, which was the nunun niswa. Right? That's what you call it. And then you have your maf'ul, which is jam'a. فَوَسَطْنَ بِهِ جَمْعًا. Inna. Of course, now you're looking for the ism of inna. Innal insana. And there's your ism of inna. That's why it's in halatul nasb. And that's why it has a fatha. And it means, of course, humanity. Indeed, humankind. Li rabbihi. Li harfu jar. Rabbi ismul majroor. Hi mudafun ilay. So jar majroor mudaf mudafun ilayh li rabbihi. Innal insana li rabbihi lakanud. La is your ismu tawkid, or for emphasis, basically. Sorry, harfu tawkid for emphasis. And kanud is your ism that indicates the word ingratitude. Innal insana li rabbihi lakanud. You have your khabar of kana. So inna al insana li rabbihi lakanudun. That's your khabar of kana. And the khabar of kana, sorry, not kana. See how your khabar of inna. And you can see here how the word that is the khabar of inna is preceded by this lamu tawkid, this harfu tawkid here. That is quite often an indication of the khabar of inna. It comes like that quite often. So if you're looking for the khabar of inna, well, obviously the main giveaway is the fact that it's in halatu raf. But the second giveaway is that it has this harfu tawkid that starts with this prefix. And what I find so profound about this verse, Ya Rab, it's like this whole front part is connected, right? وَالْعَادِيَاتِ ضَبْحًا فَالْمُورِيَاتِ قَدْحًا فَالْمُغِيرَاتِ صُبْحًا فَأَثَرْنَ بِهِ نَقْعًا فَوَسَطْنَ بِهِ جَمْعًا. And then very suddenly, like mufaja'atan, very suddenly, it changes course unexpectedly, unannounced. It goes from this entire picturesque scene that is painted, and then summa goes into innal insana li rabbihi lakanud, to a massive blow to humanity, a massive blow to one's ego, because Allah didn't speak about humankind at all. He mentioned nothing about insan. He was talking about horses and the battlefield. And then suddenly it's like smack in your face. You know what? You. Now he doesn't say you. He says indeed humankind. Like he doesn't make it personal because it's a very general thing and there are exceptions to this. But he says humankind, we are lakanud, extremely ungrateful. That word is like in a hyperbolic form. Very, very ungrateful. It's like, wow, how did we go from that to this? And then it clicks. You see, that horse's obedience to his master, that horse's undying, I don't know, relentlessness to just go into the thick of the battlefield, and this master gives him what? A couple of sips of water to drink, couple of barrels of hay, and that's about it. And the horse will die for that master. But you, humanity, you are ungrateful. لِرَبِّهِ, to his Lord. It's an amazing surah, wallahi. I don't know if it's just me who likes it so much, but I just find it to be profound. And then what's worse, oh humankind, and then he carries on. Wa innahu, so wawul atf, inna again, ismu inna. Sorry, inna, and then the who is ismu inna. Ismu inna, wa innahu. Ala dhalika, jar wa majroor. And then again, la shahidun. What did we just learn in the previous ayah? That when you're looking for your khabar of inna, the first clue would be your dhammatain for halatu raf. But your second clue is that it's introduced with the prefix of the lamu tawkid, la shahidun. So that is your khabar of inna. Any questions before we go to the next verse? No questions? Okay. So the next person who answers, oh, here's a question coming up. Okay, good. The person who answers my next question will be allowed to have a kusista at buka time. Wa innahu, and indeed he, again you have the same thing. So you have the wa'ul atf. Inna, the who is the ismu inna. It's very difficult to make a joke on a Zoom class because you're literally making a joke to yourself. No one is laughing. And if they are laughing, you don't know about it. It's very, very difficult to make a joke. And I do try because a Zoom class can be very tedious. And I think, I don't know how proficient I am at it or not. But I have a feeling that it's a skill that very few people actually have because it's quite a unique thing to teach a screen and to teach a camera and interact. It's a very new thing for many people. So I try to keep it as close to a real class and how I would be in a real class as possible. And for those of you who know me and who have been in my real classes, please don't tell the others how I am. Let them find out for themselves the hard way, inshallah ta'ala. I think that would be best for everyone. Bismillah. Shukran, Sister Hasina. وَإِنَّهُ, the same thing again, so we can have some nice repetition بإذن ta'ala. وَإِنَّهُ وَأُ الْعَطْفِ, you have inna, and then you have the ism of inna, the hu. لِحُبِّ, yeah, you have jar wa majroor. لِحُبِّ, for the love of. لِحُبِّ, the love of what? Al-khayri, that's mudafun ilay, the love of goodness. Mudafun ilay. La shadidun, and again there you can see it's your khabar of inna, because number one, it has your dhammatain, which is, a sign of halatu raf, and it's introduced by your lam tawkid once again. So the nice part about verses like this that follow one another and they follow the exact same i'rab, it gives you 3 separate examples of the same concepts in the same order. So if you don't take advantage of learning your i'rab through verses like this, then you are really crazy, because they are such good examples. You're not going to get better opportunities. So if so if you've been having problems identifying things like your ism of inna, your khabar of inna, etc., and you don't master them through this opportunity here, you're missing out, right? So what I would recommend is, now in the short surah, as we go along, right, take note of the repetition when you have this type of repetition. So it's quite common because of the rhyming scheme, right? وَالْعَادِيَاتِ ضَبَحًا فَالْمُورِيَاتِ قَدَحًا فَالْمُغِيرَاتِ صُبَحًا فَأَثَرْنَ. Okay, so that's the first 3. That's the first set, right, of 3 verses. فَأَثَرْنَ بِهِ نَقْعًا فَوَسَطْنَ بِهِ جَمْعًا. That's another set. And then you have إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لِرَبِّهِ لَكَنُودٌ وَإِنَّهُ عَلَى ذَلِكَ لَشَهِيدٌ وَإِنَّهُ لِحُبِّ الْخَيْرِ لَشَدِيدٌ. That's another set, exactly the same. So you had the 3 opportunities to master 3 different sets of i'rab rules with 3 completely different sets of examples. That is very, very important for you to take advantage of. Okay, we move on. أفلا يعلم, we translate it as but does not, يعلم, no. Now the at the beginning of this word afala, what do we call this hamza here? What do we call the hamza there? It's not a trick question. I know the answer is on the screen, so you can just simply just tell me. Remember the kusista deal, right?
Asl.
Say again.
Hamza to asl.
Okay. Firstly,
Wasaltul
it's
istifham.
That's correct.
Hamzatul istifham.
That is correct. It's hamzatul istifham. And for the first person who answered, shukran for answering. Just 2 notes, 2 points there. I mean, I hope you don't mind. We are in a class, right? So I heard you. You were incorrect in your selection, but also your selection is not asl, it's wasl. Hamzatul wasl. That's not the answer. It is hamzatul istifham. The second person who spoke was correct, but I'm just rectifying you so that you know for next time when you do actually come across a hamzatul wasl, that it's wasl and not asl. That would be 2 different things, inshallah. But shukran for answering. Don't stop. You know why I think I did well. I did pretty well, alhamdulillah, as a student. At least I thought so. And I think why I did well was I used to ask a lot of questions. Like, I think my teachers probably found me very irritating at one stage. I used to ask a lot of questions, and I used to answer or try to answer practically every question, to a point where I think I probably was detested by everyone else in the class, because I was like literally trying to answer every single question. But I wasn't trying to show off. I wasn't trying to sort of be out there. Kind of just that's kind of just like a byproduct that you come across like that. But I understood that in order for me to learn, this is what I need to do. So I did it. I asked the questions and I answered the questions, and I just tried to participate as much as possible. Wallahi, it makes a huge difference. I am not a passive learner, so that wouldn't work for me. So I encourage those who feel that they are more active learners, by all means, with me, you can ask a million questions and you can answer every question. I honestly don't mind. Did somebody want to say something?
Yes, Maulana. Just to clarify the principle, because maybe I got confused with Mulana Zakaria.
Bismillah.
Because he referred in the class previously about the Hamzatul Wasl and the Hamzatul Asl, and the differentiating point was that the Hamzatul Asl has a small Hamza at the top.
Okay.
So that is why yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay. Now, I'm not familiar with that then. That's either something that I forgot about or something that I'm not familiar with at all. But I don't, this is not that, right? Either way, this is not that. So shukran for that. I will ask him and I will probably also learn something in that regard. But it makes sense also what you're saying, because the Hamzatul Wasl is the one that you just read through and it wouldn't have a Hamza. And then I suppose there's a different name for the one that you don't read through because it has a Hamza. So it makes sense just by what you're saying, but I'll ask him and just get updated on that, inshallah. But this one you can see there on the screen, it's Al-Hamza, Hamzatu Istifhamin. It's the Hamza of Istifham.
What does that mean, please?
Maulana, is it for me right to say that is actually a Hamza that you ask a question, it's a question?
That's correct, yes. I was getting to that, yes. It's for asking a question. Sorry, it was the sister who said something now?
And I was going to ask what that meant.
Oh, okay. Yes. So I'm getting to that, right? Istifham, from the word fahima yafhamu, which means to understand. And then istifham on the 10th bab, how would you translate that? Fahima yafhamu on the 10th bab. How would you translate that?
Would it be to seek to understand?
Absolutely, to seek to understand. So that Hamza is indicating that you're seeking to understand. Now, when you're seeking to understand, you are what? Asking a
question.
Exactly. Which is why I had the whole preamble of me asking questions. You understand? So when you ask a question, you are actually seeking to understand. That's all it is. It's not that you're trying to show off or you're trying to be difficult or whatever the case may be. It's that you are seeking to understand. You are doing istifham. And that's exactly what the Hamza is called. Hamzatul istifham. Afala. So normally it would just be fala ya'lam. So he does not know. Right? So he does not know. But you add the Hamzatul istifham there, then it becomes so does he not know. So a Hamzatul Istifham turns a statement into a question. And you can use it practically everywhere. You can say, Ismuka Farid. That would mean, if you literally translate it, your name is Farid. But because of my tonality, you would probably say, is your name Farid? But the correct way to say, is your name Farid would be, Ismuka Farid? Right? It's not the best way to say it. You would probably use a different word like hal ismuka farid or something like that, but it's fine. Or you would say masmuk. But the point is just to show you that any statement can be turned into a question just by adding one little prefix and then there you go. Okay, so afala ya'lamu, alima ya'lamu, that's pretty straightforward. Fi'al mudari'. Afala ya'lamu, where is the fa'il of ya'lamu? Uncle Abbas, it's 10:15 already. You can't say it's too early anymore, no? I'm just saying. It's inside, yes. So it's inside. You first look to the left, then you look on top, then you look inside, and it is inside. Dhamir mustatir huwa, going back to insan. Where is the insan? Okay, it's not even on our page anymore, but yeah, that's where it's going back to. أفلا يعلم إذا, that's your ظرف زمان showing time. إذا ظرف زمان showing time. بعثر, when بعثر, this is a فعل مجهول and it's referring to إذا بعثر, when he is بعثر. So it's again ضمير مستتر هو, it's inside. When he is resurrected or brought up and scattered about, from where? ما في القبور, that which, oh sorry, my apologies, I jumped the gun here. I need to go back. إذا بعثر ما, the damir is not inside. First and foremost, we need to slow down. Secondly, I said this is a fi'al majhul, right? So I should not have asked where's the fa'il. There is no fa'il because it's a fi'al majhul. That's very important. This is what happens when you start taking shortcuts and you don't teach grammar for a while. Then you just keep with your shortcuts and you call anything as long as you understand. That's not good. I must be more technical here. بعثر is your فعل مجهول, so you don't have a fa'il. What do you have? What's the thing called in place of a fa'il?
نائب فاعل.
Na'ibul fa'il, yes. And how do you look for the na'ibul fa'il? Exactly the same way you would look for a normal regular fa'il. We don't discriminate. Whether you're a na'ibul fa'il or a fa'il, we will look for you in the same way. We will not be fa'ilist. Okay? So you look on top, there's nothing on top. It's not, you look to, sorry, you look to the left, and then you go and find a word in halatul raf. Right, now let's do that quickly. Is there anything to the left? Bu'thira ma fil kubur.
No, man.
Anybody else want to give it a go?
I'm still laughing from the joke you made.
Okay.
You're not fine.
Ma is actually in halatul raf. This ma, yeah, you can't see it, but it is. Take my word for it, right? When that which is in the qubur, in the graves, bu'thira, is scattered, is brought out and resurrected and scattered about, right? So the ma is actually your na'ibul fa'il. The ma is actually your na'ibul fa'il. All right, and then you have fil kuburi, jar wa majroor, pretty straightforward. Harfu jar ismul majroor. Wa hussila. Again, now we have a repetition coming up. Wa al-atf. Hussila. This is once more a fi'al, and it is in what form? Is it a normal, what's the opposite of majhul? What's a normal fi'al called?
Madi or Mudar.
Ma'loom. I think that's all. I don't think there's anything else to it. Okay, so it's a normal fi'al. Hussila. It's on the second bab. It's on the second bab. Hassala. And this would be hussila. And when you have a majhul verb, we're looking for what?
Na'ibul fa'il.
Na'ibul fa'il. And where is it?
The ma again.
The ma again. So this is what I meant when I said the repetition. It gives you a chance to solidify something because you see it again and again. All right. Hussila. Hasala means to reach, when something is attained or when something is reached. But hussila, it is made to be reached. It is made to be manifest. It is attained, right? I don't know what would be the best English words to use here, really. But more importantly is to see the word on the second bab. So the made to be reached, made to be attained. So really what they come out with in the translations, they would say is brought out, right? Is brought out. So as opposed to reaching something, you're bringing it out. So wahussila, and that which is in the chest. Wahussila ma fi suduri, that which is in as-suduri, the chest. Hussila is brought out. So all the secrets, all the hidden gems and jewels and skeletons and whatever else lies in here, it will be brought out on that day. Ma, and then fi suduri, jar wa majroor. Inna, indeed. Rabbahum. Let's see. Yeah, this is a nice one. Okay. Class, please get ready to unmute yourselves. I would like you to complete the entire sentence in Arab. Inna rabbahum bihim yawma idhil la khabir. Let's start with, okay, I'll start. Inna. Inna is the instrument of an inna construction. Now, what do we look for next? Go. Rabbahum. Come now, before Buka.
Is the next construction مضاف مضاف إليه غير له؟
You missed something.
مضاف.
You're right, but you missed something. You are perfectly right. Rabbahum is mudaf mudafun ilayh. But before that,
To do with sibling in rough. So
somebody said it. Um, somebody spoke at the same time as you. Can you just repeat it, please?
Is Rabba the ism of inna? Because it's in
There we
Nasb.
go. There we go. Rabba is the ism of inna, halatul nasb. That's why it has a fatha. Irshad, did you catch that?
yes, Malana, got it.
Okay. So inna rabbahum, indeed, you their Lord. So that is the ism of inna, and then rabbahum, as Irshad said, is mudaf mudafun ilay. Next, bihim. Who is clever enough to decipher this
Jar
one? This one is
Majroor,
really hard.
Maulana. Jar Majroor.
Jar majroor. MashaAllah. It's jar wa majroor. Next one, yawma idin. See if I can just cover that up there. Okay, I'm not sure if you guys did this yet, so I'm not going to press you. But is there anyone who wants to guess?
I think you mentioned it earlier, but I also can see it on the screen, but it denotes time.
Okay, I was wondering if anybody's gonna just it's like on the screen, but okay. There are certain words. I'm not going to teach the lesson now. I'm sure you have period for that and teachers who specifically focus on that. I wasn't asked to focus on that, so I'll ask Maulana Khalil and find out if I'm supposed to teach you new concepts as well. But there are certain words in the Arabic language where a single word will denote either time or place. Just the word in and of itself, without anything attached to it, shows you time or it shows you place. That word is called a dharf. And if it denotes time, then it's dharf zaman. Zaman means time. And if it denotes place, then it's makan, because makan means place. And the the key point about it is that the word will be in halatun nasb because of the fact that it is dharf, zaman or makan. That's irrelevant. So yawma idhin, on that day, right? On that day is such a word, right? On that day. So therefore, the word is in halatun nasb. There's a whole explanation about the yawma idhin, the idhin part. I can't recall the details. I'm not going to venture into it because I may just I may just make a mistake. But it's a what? How do you put this? It's two or three words that actually put together that forms this new word. But you don't have to worry about the 2 or 3 words being put together. That's because the word is new now. It's set like this. Yawma idhin. It's a different form of the word altogether. And it is in halat al-nasb and it is dharf zaman. So you may ask, so why does it have the kasratain on there? That's where the explanation comes in that I don't want to speak about because I may just miss a detail or two and confuse you. And I don't want to do that because you haven't done the concept yet. So I'd rather us skip that and you rather deal with the concept from scratch and then we deal with it bi'idhnillah ta'ala when we come across it again. Or you can ask me once you learn it and then we can deal with it again, inshallah. But now let's just backtrack quickly. We started with inna. So inna rabbahum bihim yawma idhil la khabir. What would la khabir be?
Khabir will be the khabar of inna.
Correct. Now, I don't know. I think it was the previous class or this class. I don't know. My brain is also fasting, so I can't recall if I mentioned this to this class or the previous class. But the giveaway is the what?
The lam and the raf.
So it was this class. Okay. So khabirun is first and foremost in halatul raf, and that you can see very clearly because of the dammatain. And that's your first giveaway that it is a khabar of inna. And then the second one is your lamu tawkid, because often the khabar of inna is introduced as such. Inna rabbahum bihim yawma idhil la khabir. La khabir is your khabar of inna. And then just in terms of the ma'na, so insan carries about with extreme love for material things. لِحُبِّ الْخَيْرِ لَشَدِيدٌ. And while they are distracted by these material things, they forget to be grateful to Allah. I'm just going to unshare the screen here quickly. We start out with the horses, that whole picture that gets painted for us there. And then Allah Ta'ala tells us, humanity, you guys are very ungrateful. And then we think about it and it's like, oh, okay, because the horses are obedient and we are not. And, you know, what does Allah do for us compared to the horse master for the horse? And then Allah carries on and He says, وَإِنَّهُ عَلَى ذَلِكَ لَشَهِيدٌ. And on top of being ungrateful, we also acknowledge the fact that we are very ungrateful. And on top of acknowledging that fact, وَإِنَّهُ عَلَى ذَلِكَ لَشَهِيدٌ وَإِنَّهُ لِحُبِّ الْخَيْرِ لَشَدِيدٌ. And indeed, we are very, very much in love with material gain. We are very hedonistic. And our hedonism, our love of material things and our own pleasures distracts us. It distracts us from Allah. There are other surah that also indicate this as well. أَلْهَاكُمُ التَّكَاثُرُ حَتَّى زُرْتُمُ الْمَقَابِرِ. So in that distraction, وَإِنَّهُ لِحُبِّ الْخَيْرِ لَشَدِيدٌ أَفَلَا يَعْلَمُ إِذَا بُعْثِرَ مَا فِي الْقُبُورِ وَحُصِّلَ مَا فِي الصُّدُورِ إِنَّ رَبَّهُم بِهِمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ لَخَبِيرٌ. In that distraction, are you not aware that what is in your hearts will come forth on that day? Are you not aware that what is in the graves will be pulled out on that day? And are you not aware that Allah is aware? Inna rabbahum bihim yawma idhil lakhabir. That on that day, their Lord will be completely informed. Like there's nothing about us that Allah does not know. You know how sometimes you think about your deepest, darkest feelings or secrets or thoughts, and it's just there, you know, and you're fine with it being there because it doesn't mean anything. You're not doing anything about it. It just comes and then it goes away again, and you're okay because nobody knows about it. If somebody were to find out about it, that would be horrible. But in those moments, just remember that Allah knows. Allah knows who we are. Allah knows what we are. Allah knows how we think. Okay. There's a question, Brother Shaukat. Bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum, Maulana.
Wa alaikum
I'm
salam.
just like very like curious, like you know, I think it's by verse number 7, like why
Mhm.
Allah would use the word al khair like for wealth and that, man. Is Allah like alluding to say that like wealth is like not necessarily a bad thing, but that we shouldn't like it shouldn't reside in our hearts, but just rather like in our hands is maybe that's what Allah is like trying. So I just find it like very like why Allah would use the word khair for like wealth.
That's a beautiful question, mashallah. Jazakumullah khairan. Allah reward you. I think it's a very important question. It's a very important question. Does anybody want to offer their opinion on that particular question?
Maulana, can you repeat the question, please, Maaf?
The question is, why does Allah refer to material gain, material wealth as khair? وَإِنَّهُ لِحُبِّ الْخَيْرِ لَشَدِيدٌ. Why would it be called khair?
Ma'am, could it be that if used correctly, it could be a benefit to you, goodness to you?
You don't have to answer so hesitantly, so reluctantly. You can just say, I think it means this, that's fine. And I think that's definitely a valid insight. I would totally agree with you on that. Wealth, material wealth isn't evil at all. Having it may be really bad for some people.
It's what you do with it.
Yes. Having it may be really bad for some people, but there's no intrinsic evil to wealth. Okay. My example that I like to quote in this regard is the fact that the Ashara Mubashara, the 10 Sahaba who were given glad tidings of Jannah by the Prophet ﷺ during their lives, there were more than 10, but this is a specific group of 10 that were sort of grouped together. I would say about 70% of them were some of the wealthiest of their time. Right? So it's not that wealth is evil. Okay, Islam does not regard it as such. So it is khair, it has khair in it. There's khair in material things. But as the sister said, it's what you do with it. And as the brother who actually asked the question initially, Brother Shaukat, indicated to, it's where it fits in your life, right? As he said, if you keep it in your hand, you're all good, you're all fine. But the moment you become emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually attached to it, where it gets to your head, now you're not fine anymore. That's a problem because you kept it in your heart, like the ship in the ocean, right? I don't know if I've made this example with you before, but I frequently quote it. If the ship is in the ocean, the water is good as long as the water is outside of the ship, because the ship needs the water. You can't get to your destination without the water. At the same time, if the water gets into the ship, that's bad. That's very bad. So that's at least one reason. Okay. I would actually love for you to do some tafakkur and tadabbur on this as homework. And over and above just thinking about it, I would also like you to go and read up a bit about it, inshallah, to find out, this is the question, right? How does Islam view material wealth? And why does Allah refer to it as khair in this particular surah? So the first part of the question is general. How does Islam view wealth? And what is the Islamic position or philosophy on wealth and accruing wealth and so on? That's the first part of the question. And then the second part of the question is, and why would it be referred to as khair in this surah? Perhaps there are other perspectives that we could gain as well. So let's think about it and also do some reading up on it, inshallah. As a note, Maulana Muhammad Ka, one of the teachers here, he was sharing with me the other day that he's been reflecting on Surah Baqarah and how often and how frequently Allah Ta'ala refers to philanthropy in Surah Baqarah, giving for the sake of Allah. It's actually, he made a good point. It's actually weird how detailed the verses are regarding spending for the sake of Allah. It's weird because, look here, remember the Quran doesn't even tell us how to make salah. It's not the nature of the Quran to go into details. There are only a few exceptions where the Quran goes into details with ahkam, like talaq and mirath, etc. But generally speaking, the Quran just tells you, make salah, pay zakah, that's about it. The details we get from the Sunnah. So why does the Quran teach us such a great deal about giving for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That's a question that I'd like to think about and explore further. Yes, on the one hand, giving is important, but why go into all the detail about it? There's a lot of significance there. So I'd like for us to also do some tafakkur and tadabbur on this. The world, material gain, hedonism, how does this fit into Islam? There were people in the past. What time does this period end? Isn't it done yet? I think it's done. Let me just see quickly. I might be getting into trouble here.
I'm sure
Somebody
Milana
can tell.
is also good behind.
Okay. Okay, let me just finish up with this quickly. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. So, where was I? Material wealth is the philanthropy and the thing of giving in the Quran. I mentioned that. Yes.
No, I said no. I just maybe want to remind Maluma was like talking along the lines of like how detailed Allah is speaking about like giving, but Allah doesn't really like make mention about like how to perform salah. I think Maluma was there.
So it's actually weird in that sense that Allah Ta'ala goes into that depth. Now, here's the thing: how do we strike the balance? That's inevitably why we are asking these questions, because from a spiritual perspective, how do we strike the balance? And I think this is just my perspective, my personal opinion. I think the balance is actually different for each person in this regard. I think the amount of wealth in dunya a person has is relative to that person, right? Inna Allah yarzuqu man yasha'u bighayri hisab. Allah grants rizq to whomsoever He wants without counting, but He also grants rizq in a very wise way, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think for some individuals it's more healthy than others. I mean, if I were wealthy, would I be as benevolent and as philanthropic as others? You know, would it get to my head? Would I still be involved in deen, etc., etc.? So I don't know. Allah knows. Okay. So how do we find that elusive balance? Because the zuhad, what the zuhad, people who practice zuhud, the earlier scholars from, I would say, the Sahaba and the Tabi'een already, who became very involved in Islamic piety, right? Meaning they made their life's focus piety, taqwa, ihsan, and they wanted higher and higher levels in that. They often resorted to asceticism, or a form of asceticism, which is referred to as zuhud, which means that they choose to not have the pleasures of this world. They choose to not have the pleasures of this world. Not that they are poor or impoverished, but they would like it's something like minimalism is today, which is a very different philosophy and a very different motive. So they would wear like one item of clothing. They would only have like one or two sets of clothing, like simple, basic clothing, often made out of wool. And they would wear that, and they would live in a very basic house, and they would eat very basic foods and so on. And this is all to enhance their spirituality by shunning the pleasures of this world and choosing the next world rather. So there's that on the one hand, which the Sharia doesn't necessarily require you to do, but to a certain extent, you know, you need to also have that, because the more material you have, the less space you have for Allah. So it's an indirectly proportionate relationship. But then on the other hand, you had Sahaba who were some of the wealthiest, who were promised Jannah in their lives. So where do you strike that balance? How do you strike that balance? How does one view wealth in Islam? These are important questions to answer and to think about, inshallah ta'ala. طيب, we can conclude on that. Abu Darda, I'm not sure if he was one of them. Wallahu alam, maybe. I can't recall exactly who, but Abdurrahman ibn Auf, Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala, and definitely Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala, and these were all some of them. But yeah, think about it, give it some serious thought, try to do some reading up on what we've mentioned in relation to that. So some tafsir, even some of the companions' histories, if you have some time for that, inshallah, this will all be very beneficial. And inshallah, we can pick up the discussion from there. The next surah is Surah Qari'ah. I am looking forward to doing that surah. It's another one with a lot of alliteration, onomatopoeia, also very picturesque, and it also deals with eschatology, right? Death and what comes after death, as this one did towards the end, inshallah. Sister Tawheeda, wealth can also mean that you tie family ties by assisting those in your family that are struggling. Yeah, sure, there's lots of expressions of wealth in that sense. But Jazakumullah khairan for your contributions. Until next time, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Hopefully that's next week Sunday, but I'm not quite sure. I find out as we go along.
Before you end, just on the rule for the khabar of inna, does it include
Yes.
the lam, or is it just excluding the lam? If you have to put
No,
labels to it.
the lam itself is not part of the word. The lam is extra. So the khabar of inna, it depends on how you're doing i'rab, right? The way you express i'rab is a science in its own. But for me, if I were to ask you what's the khabar of inna, you would say kanud and not la kanud. And that the lam is tawqid. But it wouldn't be wrong to say la kanud is your khabar of inna either. It just depends on how you express it. It's two different ways. But the main thing for you is to know that they are separate. They are not intrinsically part of one another in the word. Does that make sense?
Yes, shukran lana.
عفوا. طيب إن شاء الله وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد. سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.